and we haven't any apologies. I move quickly to agenda item number 2, which is the draft minutes. Copy of the draft minutes held on the 24th of February 2015. That's at page 4. So if members are content with the detail and accuracy.
Agreed.
Agreed. Chairperson, business. In regard to departmental papers, at the beginning of last week's oral briefing by Tourism Ireland, we did raise the issue of there were potential delays in the system regarding the lateness of departmental papers. Now, and the suggestion that I might need to speak to the Permanent Secretary about this. Now, table today, just so that members can see, there's some papers which are way late. And you can see there from the first inside the front cover of the table papers, some of them that are long, they're late. No? And responses when they should have been due, and will have been due. So, members content that I meet with the Permanent Secretary to discuss this and try and get a bit of progress on these matters.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Now, next item, University, or Ulster University, they call themselves now, Economic Policy Unit. At our meeting on the 18th of November, the committee had asked for a copy of the advice the department received on corporation tax from the Ulster University Economic Policy Unit. The department responded that it would be available to us after Christmas recess. However, they didn't specify which Christmas, but we're well after it now, so if we're content to ask the department again for the information and possibly maybe add it to the list for discussion with the Permanent Secretary.
Great.
Okay. Next is Consumer Council event. The clerk and the clerk to the Committee for Finance and Personnel met with the Consumer Council last week to organise a stakeholder event addressing issues around bank closures. The event has now been arranged for the 26th of May in the members' dining room, and further details will be provided to members near the time. And just to remind members that a stakeholder event has been organised for our inquiry, that's the inquiry that's ongoing, for the 14th of April. So, and to stimulate some more interest in it as well, not to say that there isn't any in it, but are members content that we invite the Belfast Telegraph top 100 companies to attend the event? Agreed?
Yes, agreed. Have we room for them more?
Maybe, well, if the half of them turn up, we'll maybe be all right. Gordon?
Where do we intend to have it?
It's, where is it? Gallery, is it? It should be.
Is it long enough? Yeah.
The event or the gallery? So,
both.
That's grand then. Good to go. Next item is the launch of new Farm Safety TV advert. Table today is an invite from the Farm Safety Partnership to the launch of its new TV advertisement to be held on Wednesday, the 11th of March from 2 to 3 p.m. at Streamvale Open Farm in Donald. Now, unfortunately, the Justice Committee meets at that same time, so I can't attend. So, unless other members are available, could attend.
Open to go, yeah.
Phone Gordon now. Okay, good enough. That's grand. Next item is agenda item number 4, which is the oral briefing from Tourism Northern Ireland on their key capital project. And we have a briefing paper from Tourism NI at page 16 onwards. And briefing the committee today from Tourism Northern Ireland are Catherine Thompson, Chief Operating Officer, and Laura McCurry, Director of Product Development. You're both very welcome to the meeting. Thank you for attending. And, well, at this stage, you know the form, Catherine, that
yes.
You have up to 10 minutes to make your opening statement, and we move over to the Q&A session. Okay, so please continue.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come and see you today. We will keep our opening comments very brief so that there's plenty of time for you to ask questions. At Tourism Northern Ireland, in the context of the Hunter Review, we're focusing on kind of 3 key areas of responsibility as we move into the future. The first kind of part of our role is really around, through the research and insights and intelligence that we generate, we are helping to develop the strategic direction and provide strategic leadership for the development of tourism in Northern Ireland, as well as helping to inform policy development. Our second key role, and probably the largest part of what we do, is around developing the visitor experience here on the ground in Northern Ireland. And finally then, we will focus and continue to focus on promoting the destination through our marketing activities in the island of Ireland and through working in partnership with Tourism Ireland to provide them content for their activities overseas. Around that second objective, developing the visitor experience, we are investing and have been and will continue to invest in the infrastructure, and then working with programmes to really animate that and create more extensive visitor experience around that through, for example, attracting and hosting major events, as well as trying to accredit the quality and drive up the quality of the visitor experience and ensure that the skills and capability of our sector are developed. And it's really within the context of that, particularly around investing in the infrastructure, that we're here to give you an update today. So we have been investing significant amounts of capital financial assistance through our tourism development scheme over the current programme for government. So the current programme for government has run from 2011, and we have supported and continue to support a total of 67 projects with financial assistance, and that includes projects such as built heritage projects such as the Guildhall and the lighting strategy in Derry, Londonderry, through to the East Strand and West Strand in Portrush, Port Glenone Marina, the Belfast Welcome Centre, right down to the Mourne Coastal Route and mountain bike trails, just to name a sample of those projects. The total grant that we are administering through the current programme for government is £40 million of capital assistance, and that is levering a further £49 million. So the total cost of all of those projects is around £89 million, and that's across the totality of Northern Ireland. So for every pound that we are investing from government, we're generating £2.25 million in terms of the leverage that that's generating. But today, really, we would like to just come and update you on two of the significant projects that we have within that context. Two of the projects, we have two projects that are receiving over £2 million worth of grant. One of those is the Belfast in the extension and to the Belfast waterfront to provide integrated conferencing and exhibition facilities, and the other is HMS Caroline. And I'm just going to hand over to Laura to give you a brief update on those two projects.
Okay, Catherine, thank you. We'll take the waterfront first, and then we'll talk about HMS Caroline. And the waterfront extension is actually quite significant because it offers the opportunity for us, unlike some of the other projects that are really designed to target our leisure visitors, the waterfront hall extension is designed for us to compete more effectively in the business tourism market. So Northern Ireland has traditionally been lagging behind other parts of the UK in terms of our ability to successfully compete in this space, but and that's really because of the lack of sufficient banqueting space, exhibition space and breakout facility space. So the Waterfront Hall project is designed to tackle that and help us compete more effectively in terms of attracting business tourists here. So just a reminder in terms of the total grant assistance that is going into this project, it is significant. There is £14.5 million coming from Europe via ERDF, £4 million which is a mix of EGI and core money, and then Belfast City Council themselves putting in £11 million into this project. So it's almost the guts of £30 million in terms of the extension to the project. So the project itself aims to really create an integrated conference and exhibition centre in Belfast, and what it'll really do will be position Belfast as a premium destination for national and international conferences. But as well as that, it's also going to create jobs, which is really important. So it'll improve the profile, the perception and image of Belfast, and hopefully over the years we'll be able to attract more conferences to the city. So there are very specific targets that are aligned to this project, and I'll outline those for you and then let you know sort of where we're at in terms of progress terms. So you can look at targets across sort of 4 areas. The first being the physical build itself, which is now out of the ground and underway. So it's going to provide 2,000 square metres of exhibition space on one level, which is very important to conference associations. There'll be banqueting space for a minimum of 750 delegates and breakout provision as well for 5 groups of 200 people. So that's the physical piece. In terms then of the activity and the targets that are aligned to this project, They have to attract 50,000 annual conference delegates per annum, and that's actually 35,000 of those will be from out of state, so that's very significant. There's a target to host an average of 6 national large association conferences and host an average of 6 international and European conferences, and that's from 2020. So in terms then of actual job creation targets, under the construction phase, there's a target that over the lifetime of the construction, there should be 200 construction jobs created. And then in terms of the wider job creation, it is hoped that this will create a minimum of 9 new jobs and generate GVA to the economy of over 10 million. So in terms of the status of where we're at on this at the moment, the project is very much on track to deliver. It is out of the ground and construction is proceeding in line with the project plan, which is good. In terms of construction jobs, there's 35 people employed on site at the moment, and the contractor has advised that will go up to 100 by the end of this month. In terms of the next real sort of key milestone decision for this project, it is around the operating model. And as you may or may not know, Belfast City Council have engaged RSM McClure Waters to look at an options appraisal in terms of what that operating model might actually look like, and the consultants are preparing their final analysis, and that is due to come forward within the next 2 weeks or so. So in terms of the actual job creation targets, Belfast City Council have actually advertised 4 jobs as well, primarily around sales and marketing, so they are on track to create the minimum of the 9 new jobs. So I suppose really, in conclusion, what I would say about the waterfront is that this is really going to be a step change project for Northern Ireland, and it will allow us to compete more effectively in the business tourism space. And that's very significant for particularly a lot of our hoteliers who do very well around the leisure break market, and that gets their weekend business in. So this will really help with the midweek traffic coming through. So it is on a tight delivery schedule, but as I've said at the outset, I'm pleased to report that it is on track and should be completed in March, ready for opening in the summer of next year. So that's the sort of open on the Waterfront Hall. HMS Caroline then is the second. As Catherine said, we do have a portfolio of projects. HMS Caroline is also over £1 million. In total, it's actually receiving 14.4 million. HLF are putting in 11.5 and DETI are putting in 2.7. So a little bit about the ship itself and why it is significant by way of background to the project. The ship itself is actually the last survivor of the First World War British Grand Fleet and the Battle of Jutland, which was the world's greatest navy battle. So this ship is of national and international importance and is one of only 200 ships that are actually on the Historic Ships Register. So in terms of how it came to be in Belfast, the background to this project is that back in 2012, DETI entered into a lease agreement with the National Museums of the Royal Navy and agreed to bring the ship to Belfast and convert it into a visitor attraction. So that process is now underway. So the overall aim really of this project is to preserve HMS Caroline for the benefit of people of Northern Ireland and make the story of the ship accessible and the story of the men and women who have been associated with that ship as well. So in terms of the aims of the project, it's designed really to support the development of Northern Ireland's wider maritime history as well, and it is hoped that this will create up to around 15 jobs, which would have an impact on the economy between 0.3 and 0.6 million in GVA terms. So the status of the project at the moment, the project is underway. The first phase of it really relates to the safeguarding of the vessel to prevent any further deterioration, and that process is being funded by the National Heritage Memorial Fund. And it's underway at the moment and due to complete at the end of March, at which point then the ship will pass around to dry dock, and then the next phase of the project actually kicks in, and that's actually the restoration of the ship itself. So in terms of our funding and what it's actually going towards, there's sort of three phases of that. The first being the restoration and the preservation of the ship itself into a tourist attraction. The second part then is the restoration of Thompson Dock and Pump House, and there are currently 3 vacant units there, so this will be the conversion of units 1, 2 and 3, and this will then serve as the visitor centre and the ticketing centre for the project. And then finally it's the development of the Alexandra Dock, which will include a gangway which will allow people to actually be able to access the ship. So the completion date for this is it has to be completed by May 2016, because that's actually the commemoration of the Battle of Jutland, and that's really where a lot of the marketing efforts will be focusing around in terms of having it ready for that. So they would be two of our very significant projects, and that's sort of the update on those.
So, as Laura said, those projects are still running and will run into next year. We have some projects that will complete before the end of this financial year, and we have a total of 12 projects out of the 67 that will carry into next year. So, as well as HMS Caroline and the Waterfront, there's the other kind of significant projects would be the Museum of Free Derry and the Apprentice Boys at Derry project up in Derry, Londonderry, the Goblin's Cliff Path, which should be opening in, after Easter, and the Heritage Gateway to Fermanagh, which is the new hub in Enniskillen. We would extend an invitation to the committee, particularly for the Waterfront project and HMS Caroline, to come, and you're more than welcome to come and visit and see these projects and learn a little bit more about them in terms of their progress and what they're hoping to deliver, and get a hard hat tour. But in terms then of moving forward, we are working very closely with the new local authorities, and we are trying to proactively identify projects that can come forward for the next programme for government. We would like to do some pre-development work on some of those projects this year, because getting projects speed ready is always the challenge. So we would like to be able to do some scoping work with some of the local authorities to identify projects that we can bring forward, either in the context of the Tourism Growth Fund, which the Hunter Review has identified, and we'd like to scope to see what that looks like, but also through the Rural Development Programme. They've identified 10 million for investment in strategic tourism projects, so that's another opportunity. So that's what we'd like to focus on over the next year, is closing out on the 12 projects that we will be spending on, and trying to identify where future projects are coming from, working proactively with the new local authorities.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Catherine. Thanks for your work. Two things, just HMS Caroline project, 14.2 million of an investment altogether on inevitably a historic boat. But where's your market? You've obviously, before you anticipate spending that level of funding on it, where's your market for tourists? What is your anticipated market, and what kind of information or data have you that people, aside from, and I know there are people who are historians that would obviously come, but for the wider tourism potential, what's your...
Yep. Laura can talk to the detail of it, but HMS Caroline will sit within the wider Titanic Belfast experience and the wider maritime story. So there is a breadth, we're providing a breadth and depth to that experience in terms of what we have down there. I think the visitor projections for HMS Caroline are around 70 or 80,000 per annum, and you might want to just say something about where we would see those targeting those coming from.
Yeah, I think in year one, the original projections are actually for 95,000, and that is namely because of it'll coincide with the commemoration of the Battle of Jutland. And then, in addition to that, then those visitors will drop down to about 68,000 per year thereafter, and they will come from a mixture of those people who are actually, we call them our culturally curious segment, and they are actually people who are very much interested in coming to uncover the heritage assets that are here. So they come primarily from GB and ROI.
Can I ask just those figures that you just provided us with there, are they based on people who are coming to Titanic anyway?
No, they are additional. They would
They're
be
additional.
The original economic appraisal looked at additional visitors.
95,000 in its first year.
That they were the figures
specifically coming for that project.
Well, they were the figures that were originally outlined in the economic appraisal.
Okay, right. Well, thanks for that. And just one other thing. This is more a constituency thing. Whenever I see a lot of money being spent everywhere in Belfast and even Fermanagh.
What about the Port Glenelg Marina, Pat?
I was thinking, you're when are you going to get around to looking at Loch Ness? You know, that big single lakeway waterway in the British Isles, and it's sitting there. Anybody ever give any thought to it?
I think we are actually doing an extensive piece of work at the moment with the new local authority chief executives to define how we actually develop both the destinations and the experiences in Northern Ireland. So that is very much work in progress from our perspective, and coming out of that, we would hope to be able to identify how we can take some of these developments forward.
Yeah, and we are proactively involved with the Loch Ness partnership as well, and I think what we'd really like to see is the private sector coming forward with some tourism innovations and experiences so that people can actually do and experience product on or around Lough Neagh. So as Catherine says, that scoping exercise is underway at the moment, but we are very much proactively tied into the Lough Neagh partnership to try and bring some of that forward.
Yeah, no, I've been aware of it. It's been in existence for a number of years, and really there hasn't anybody bang for the buck yet, you know. I'm looking forward. I'm very aware of the private sector too, but I'm also aware it's the probably most underexploited waterway in these islands, if not in the whole of Western Europe, you know. So it's work in progress, I hope.
It is. And to be honest, we see the new council structure and the responsibilities that the new local authorities will have as providing an opportunity for us to, they will be providing much stronger leadership at a local level, and we'll be able to work with and support them in terms of developing some of those assets. And it's not even so much developing, as Laura says, it's more exploiting them, and it's how we bring the private sector to the table to exploit those opportunities that exist.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dunn, Gordon.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much, ladies, for coming, and Catherine and Laura. I think it's an exciting project. Certainly, a lot of them are very good, and a lot of good work has gone, and I think we do appreciate that. You did mention about the new councils, Catherine. Do you see that as a new opportunity for engagement and for new projects to come on board? And how would you assess and evaluate such projects that may come forward?
Well, yes, very much so, and we are working, as I said, we are working proactively with the local authorities, and they are looking to identify projects that we can start scoping up and doing some pre-development work on. What we would hope is that we will have projects coming forward in the next year where we'll be able to scope them out a bit and see what's required, and then we would like to bid into the next programme for government for capital financial assistance so that we can reopen our tourism development scheme come this time next year and encourage applications from new projects that have been being worked through at the moment.
And as well as that, actually, DARD are a significant potential match funder of these projects. So we do have a central list at the moment that we've been proactively working with councils to identify, and there's about 18 projects already that we know of that could potentially be requiring funding. So as Catherine says, that list is not exhaustive yet, but we are proactively engaging with the councils to bring them forward.
Sorry, what was that number?
There's 18, but that's just a work in progress list, so there's 18 at the moment, and there's about 4 that are quite I would say, in terms of real pre-development work that needs to happen within the next year.
So do you see DARD as a major contributor then to a number of these projects?
Yeah,
where applicable, obviously.
Yes, I think what's exciting for us is that in the new rural development programme they've actually ring-fenced £10 million for strategic tourism projects, and that will, it's currently being scoped. My understanding is it will provide grants of up to 500,000 per project, so that really is a great opportunity in terms of bringing forward some of those projects in the areas that are applicable underneath that scheme.
Okay, just like yourself, Chairman, I noticed North Down and Ards are not on this list that I've noticed. Just a couple of other questions. In relation to, yes, the Titanic walkway, maybe you could give us a bit more information on that, what's involved, and if you've had any difficulties in relation to developing the project.
Okay, the Titanic Walkways, for those of you that may not know, it is a pathway project that is designed really to provide safe access for visitors in and around the Titanic quarter. The status of the project at the moment is that the contracts have been, the tenders have gone out for those contracts. They have been brought back in again for review. The planning officer was appointed and there were consultations issued to some of the key partners in the area. That closed on the 17th of February. It then goes before council, my understanding, to secure the planning, and the planning approval is on March the 6th. So once that actually gets the planning approval, then the contract can actually be awarded to progress that. So in terms of the letter of offer, it extends to September 2015. At that point, we would see the walkways being completed. But that depends on ensuring that the planning approval actually is secured on the 6th.
So we're going to see new walkways and paths, bridges and so on, linking across different
Yes,
areas?
it's a path that goes behind the slipways through the rear of the studios and the paint studios there, and then finishes actually just at the Science Park. So it is really designed to provide safe access for visitors and allow them to walk around the whole Titanic experience. And I guess really what I would say about the Titanic Quarter is this integration of the visitor experience down there is very important. We have got the Titanic, we've got HMS Caroline, we've got Nomadic, so it is important for visitors to be able to go down and walk around the whole area and actually provide a bit of a linkage to the attractions. So the walkways when they come on stream will be quite significant.
Sounds good. And is it managed? Can public walk in at any time, or is it controlled?
No, it's you can access it at any time.
If you know, the walkway has been developed from the city centre down the side of the Odyssey that goes right down around the Abercorn Basin. It's almost an extension of that, so that there can be safe, as Laura says, pedestrian access the whole way down to the Thompson Dock and Pump House. One of the big things we're working with the Titanic Foundation and Titanic Belfast and all of the partners down there on is really getting a proper integration of all of the assets and all of the different parts of the experience, so visitors can very easily get around everything that's happening down there.
Sounds good.
Could I just ask briefly, just on that point,
Okay, are you okay, Gordon?
Yes, sure.
will that walkway link to the train halt as well? Because certainly the last time I walked from the train halt, it was fighting through bushes and overgrown kind of foliage. Will that be part of the walkway project?
My understanding at the minute is it won't. This is really something that just is really around the area that I outlined. So I don't believe there's a link to the train hut, but I can check that for you.
I appreciate that.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, back to you, Gordon.
Just on the Museum of Free Derry, or Free London Derry, on the total cost of that project, what is the total cost of it?
We're giving it total financial assistance of 1.1 million through our
The total
funds.
cost of the project is 2.3 million.
2.3?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And this final funding is in relation to the last part of it, the final development of the museum, is that right?
Yes.
That 1.1 goes towards the 1.6, is that right?
Sorry, ask me that again. What is it? The 1 point?
The 1.1, in our report, it talks about this project has total financial assistance 1.1 from yourselves.
Yeah.
And the proposal is to complete the final development of the museum at a cost of 1.6.
Yes.
Yeah, our contribution
Yes.
is against the total cost of the project. So the total cost of the project is 2.3
Yeah.
million, and our contribution is 1.2 million. And really, it's to add a proper reception area on the ground floor and to hold an archive and research centre and a classroom conference space on the first floor of that building.
And will this be open to the public, general public?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and are you confident we'll get cross-community input to such a museum?
Well, that's certainly been built into the marketing plans for it as well. So we would be hopeful of that.
Okay, right. Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr McKinney, Fergal.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just touch on the Waterfront Hall? Why were no contingency plans made for temporary provision in Belfast while the work at Waterfront was pursued?
Temporary provision for...
Yes. We're potentially about to lose a Web Summit conference because there is no other space available of the size envisaged at the Waterfront Hall. So wouldn't it have been appropriate to identify temporary other accommodation to house that while the work continues?
Well, I'm not familiar with the detail in terms of the Web Summit conference and where it was supposed to go. But my understanding is, depending on the Waterfront Hall at the moment it's not closed. It is still open for business. And the schedule of works is primarily impacting upon, it's not really impacting upon anything, because certainly any evenings and weekends, the programme of works is allowed to continue. So I'm not familiar with that particular conference and if it was lost to the Waterfront Hall or the city itself.
It may be lost to the city, but what I'm saying is, if the waterfront proposal envisaged the demand for that type of thing, and therefore while work continued into this year and even into next year, from what you're saying, wouldn't it have been appropriate to have at least identified, either through potential planning permissions or other places like the King's Hall, for example, areas that would be set aside if something came in the intervening period?
I think the point, Laura, I mean, again, I don't know the details either, so I can go and we can check for you and provide that information to you.
Yes, but on a general point, wouldn't it have been appropriate to do that? Because
my understanding is that the Waterfront Hall has not, as Laura said, not been put out of action, so the capacity of the city to host conferences has not changed since. What the development will do will provide us with enhanced facilities.
Yes.
So things like the Web Summit or other events that we haven't been able to compete for before because we haven't had the infrastructure, we will now be able to compete for.
yes, but you're competing for it today, and we can't have it here today because we have no alternative provision.
And I think, Fergal, what
Even
I would
on a
say
temporary
is this,
basis.
but that is actually one of potentially 63 conferences that were identified as part of the economic appraisal that we have been unable to compete for. So in actual fact, that is actually the justification for the project.
Yes,
and there
but
is an issue that
couldn't
we
it also-
are losing conferences.
Couldn't it also been the justification for identifying some temporary provision? For example, a redundant King's Hall or the T13 Centre. At the moment, they're trying to evict, you see, traders from George's Market for a period of time to allow a conference in, which is, because there wasn't consultation, has met with anger from the traders. And that has led to them rejecting the concept. But it should never have got to that point. And why was there no consideration given to saying, why we're building this, there are, as you say now, 63 conferences, and we've made no provision on a temporary basis for allowing those in?
My understanding, and I suppose it's a bit semantics about those 63 conferences we identified, we actually wouldn't be able to bid for until such times as we have the waterfront development, because the facilities that
But that's not what we're hearing. The presentation in the Hilton Hotel last night was, here's a conference, it's ready to go, we need to get it into Belfast, it's 4,000 people, X amount of bed nights, meals, pubs, anything you want, and yet we can't host it now, because no provision was made for the intervening period. And wouldn't it have been appropriate to do that?
we will go back.
No. I know we could go back, Catherine, sorry. Wouldn't it have been appropriate to do that?
I don't know honestly, I don't know the detail of the conference.
In the generality, wouldn't it have been appropriate to put a secondary provision in on a temporary basis to say, while this is being built, we'll have a temporary proposal over here?
Yeah, I'm not. I can't answer that, because what I understand is that the Waterfront Hall has not been decommissioned in any way. So its capacity and its ability is still the same. So it's whether we're comparing, it's whether it's comparing like with like. So that's why I actually.
Clearly, the need to expand the Waterfront Hall, for clarity, there was a need to expand the Waterfront Hall facility to allow for bigger conferences. Now, we couldn't have those bigger conferences because we didn't have a bigger Waterfront Hall. Yes. But that didn't mean that conferences don't exist this year, and last year, and early into next year.
But Chair, just if I can make an intervention, I mean, I think there's a wee bit of confusion because the Waterfront Hall isn't a conference centre and wasn't a conference centre. It wasn't suitable for conferences. It's a concert venue. And we are trying to develop this £40 million conference centre for that very purpose. So we can't make a temporary conference hall. We're building one.
Sorry, the proposal is to temporarily house this conference in St George's Market.
Oh, you can put it on where you want, but we can't create a temporary conference hall.
Sorry, hold on. We're not going to be spilling over matters that should be discussed in Belfast
just to be
City
clear,
Council.
actually, Margie makes my point for me, because in fact the proposal is.
Clarify this point, and from what I'm hearing is, and in the intervening period, if there's a big event which could come here, which can't come here, what do you do? Well, you're saying is you can't.
Well, just from my perspective, the capacity of what Belfast has to host events hasn't changed.
Yes.
What we're doing is enhancing that capacity. So therefore, the events that we can bid for now haven't changed. The events that we'll be able to bid for in the future are bigger events and different events, because we're going to have that enhanced capacity. So I don't know enough about the conference you're talking about, whether it's the aspiration is for that we can't host it yet because we haven't got our enhanced facilities, or so I don't know the detail of where we're at, but I think it's important that we compare.
To bring that to a conclusion, Fergal, maybe you could present the detail of that conference.
Yeah, happy to. It'll probably be publicly over the next few days. Okay. Can I just touch on one other thing? And I don't get answers to this when I ask it, either with Invest NI or Tourism Ireland. But to what extent does your organisation liaise for in the context of big events So, for example, the Giro d'Italia. So to what extent do you then, to build a tail onto that, do you liaise with other departments about providing future attractiveness to that activity? For example, cycle tracks or whatever it happens to be. Do those conversations happen?
Yes, they absolutely happen. And if we use the Giro d'Italia as an example, or any of the major events we have, I think the reason why Northern Ireland gets so much plaudit for the success with which we deliver them is the team Northern Ireland approach that we're able to bring to them. We've done a number now, but for every one of these events, they are not just about the event that we have, but it's about how we build the legacy. So each one of these events has a legacy plan, and we have been working with DRD, who have a new cycling unit and who are developing a cycling strategy. And from our perspective, there will be a tourism element to that we will be working with them closely to influence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you, Chair.
thanks, Virgo. Mr. Flanagan, Phil.
Thanks, Patsy, and thanks for the presentation. Can take you away from Belfast City Council for a minute and talk about Enniskillen. In terms of the Gateway project and probably a role for Fermanagh District Council, but can I ask who is actually driving this project and who will manage the Gateway Centre once it opens?
The project promoter is the council, and they will manage it when it's open.
So it's just within their lease arrangement with the Environment Agency? And will the council decide what's on offer within the Gateway Centre, or what's the story with that?
That's the project board that have been assembled. Will see certainly an interpretation plan, but it will be primarily driven by the council.
Right, and what role will have the Friends of Enniskilling's Museum on that project board? Have they representation on it?
I would need to check that.
Okay. And the whole thing's been promoted as a heritage gateway to Fermanagh. What does that actually mean?
It's really about promoting an anchor within the area where visitors can actually come to and then ultimately disperse. So it would be the view that the project would actually sort of be a destination in itself, but also actually promote visitors and encourage them to go out and experience the wider region, which, to your earlier point, it is important that that gateway role certainly is provided so people that can actually disperse and take in the wider experiences in the area.
So it's going to replicate what the Tourism Information Centre does and put it inside a historic building?
Yes.
Right.
Well, there will be some interpretation. So there will be it'll be part visitor attraction. It will also provide visitor information, and it will have facilities such as, my understanding is facilities such as a cafe. So it's about creating a hub, as Laura said, in the centre of the town, which will be an integrated visitor experience, which will then help to disperse people.
But given that this is supposed to be a museum, you know, Enniskillen and Castle is supposed to be two museums actually. One of them is supposed to tell the history of Fermanagh, one of them is supposed to tell the history of two regiments of the British Army. Will there be more exhibition space for Fermanagh District Council to run the Fermanagh County Museum, or is it just going to be the Tourist Information Centre and the cafe?
I don't know the detail of the project, but the overarching project is called the Heritage Gateway to Fermanagh, and so it's why it's much broader than just the museums. But certainly we can come back to you on the specifics of that question.
I'm sure Catherine, if Phil wanted to explore the details of the project with yourselves there, that could be facilitated.
Absolutely.
Or any other member that wanted to. Eh?
Need to get these things in the record at that time. Can I raise issues that I know myself and Stephen have raised before as parents of young children, and that there's just not enough to do for people that are coming here with young families. And through this list of schemes, whilst the development of museums and things like that's all very well and good, it's not the most exciting thing to do with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Like. And I know that there's stuff in here about outdoor amenity sites and Belfast Zoo. But what consideration was given to developing projects or supporting projects like Tato Park or Fantasia, you know, which are huge draws down the country for families from across the island? You know, we're badly missing things like that here in the north. Was there any consideration given to the development of projects such as that?
Our tourism development scheme operates on an open call basis. So to an extent, we are, we're at the mercy of whatever projects come forward into that scheme, and that is why over the next period of time we are working proactively with the new local authorities to try and identify, based on visitor demand and our key segments, and we recognise family fun as one of our segments for the Island of Ireland market, and doing a match of our product, we do think there's opportunities, as you've said, to develop, and that's why we want to work with the local authorities to identify projects in the right place that we can potentially bring forward into the next scheme.
So the problem you've had is that it's a developer-led scheme as such, and the proposals just haven't came forward at this stage.
It could be, well, it could be a developer, or it could be any number of things.
But it's a project promoter you need.
Yes, we always need a project promoter for a project.
And one of the other things that I would say as well about the family market is that whenever we do our surveys, you raise a point that is actually reflected in some of our visitor attitude surveys. And if you look at a comparator in terms of Kelly's Rosslare in the south of Ireland, it is a very family-orientated hotel. And one of the issues that we actually have is not just even the project itself, it's actually very family-orientated accommodation to support that. So that is another opportunity, as well as just a capital build project. It's how do we make sure that we actually have a very family-orientated and family-centric, maybe even family-specific accommodation to
well, there is
attract
wider
more of
issues
them.
then around kids clubs and things that got built into hotels that I think is far more progressive in the south that we just haven't got here, right? I want to talk you on to bring you on to another issue. I was at an ICTU meeting in Enniskillen last week where trade unions were outlining their response to the Stormont House agreement, and in the middle of that they came up with a proposal around tourism, and what they're suggesting is that we should consider the introduction of a levy on people that are staying here for business conferences, so £1 a night on beds for people that are here for a business conference, and then that money should be used to subsidise the cost of hosting business conferences. And they give the example of one of their most recent conferences where they were intended to have it in Belfast because it rotates around the 4 provinces, I think, and it was Belfast's turn to have it. But due to the cost of having it in Belfast and that there was no form of subsidy available, they actually went to Killarney instead because they got the venue for nothing, because the people down there realised that having this conference there in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the week, would bring huge benefits to Killarney, and I think it brought €4 million into the town at a time when there was nothing else on. Can I ask what consideration has been given, and I know it's probably not your direct remit, but in terms of adding a £1 tax onto business beds to help reduce the cost of holding business conferences here, which would make it more attractive to bring in outside money and to host conferences here?
Yeah. And as it is not my direct remit, so I will give you an answer, and then if you need any further detail, we can bring it to you. We've recognised, working in partnership with Belfast City Council and Visit Belfast and Invest NI, that conference subvention is a key issue for us in terms of going forward, and we haven't scoped what that will look like, but we have had a relatively small conference subvention scheme that we've operated in partnership with Belfast City Council in the past, but I think, and we also have a corporate ambassador scheme and a business ambassador scheme, which Invest NI is a partner to as well. But I think that in the context of the new Belfast Waterfront Hall extension, we do need to revisit that. So I don't know if that direct proposal has been considered, but certainly conference subvention and how we attract and support business conferences that come here is an issue that is very live at the moment.
I think part of the difficulty might be how do you do it and how do you collect it and how do you subsequently use it then? You could maybe wind up spending an awful lot of money to collect something that would be difficult to collect.
Yeah, and what we will need to do as part of that process is to look at some of our nearest competitors in terms of what they do and what they operate within their cities and what we can learn from that. So that will be part of that process.
Could I just ask on a similar vein in terms of the allure or attractions, one thing or another, the currency fluctuations? Many people, including people who are organising weddings and stuff like that now, are just, for them it's a bit of a no-brainer because of the strength of sterling and the euro is around about 73, I think, at the moment. What do you do? You really can't do anything about that. You're at the mercy of the markets, basically.
Yes, and I mean, currency is an interesting issue because I suppose what we would say is that currency and currency exchange rates is just one factor that impacts on someone's decision to come on holiday. So there'll be a range of other factors, and in terms of Northern Ireland, our positioning has never been as a budget destination. We've always tried to offer good value and offer added value for visitors who are coming, but particularly in the context of the exchange rate at the moment, I think that it will be a challenge for businesses, particularly around the border regions, and we need to be realistic about that. And so we'll be working with them to look at how we can add value to our visitor experiences and how we can continue to exceed visitor experiences, because those are the kind of things that will make people continue to choose you. But I think we need to be realistic. It is a challenge.
But I'm really back to that point that the likes of conferences, weddings and the likes, that if you're anywhere within 40 miles of the border at all, you're going to be saying, well, how much is it here? How much is it in Cavan or Monaghan or Donegal, whatever it might be? So what do you do in those circumstances? Just live with it?
Well, I think that we will always work proactively with our industry, and through our marketing activities we'll always be trying to package offers, and weddings are just one part of a business's market. I appreciate it can be a large part of their market, but it's looking at which markets are coming, where's the growth coming from, and how can we maximise all of the opportunities that there are. So I think it's a case of working with businesses and knowing what the issues are and looking at how we can actually help support in terms of addressing some of those issues.
Okay, thank you. Mr Humphreys. William?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you both very much for your presentation. In terms of the Waterfront Hall, back to my time on the Council when I chaired the Development Committee, I was aware that Visit Belfast, as it is now, then the Visitor and Convention Bureau, was very actively out there trying to seek conference tourism to the city, and was very successful at it. But I think, if I recall correctly, the difficulty of actually having the facilities, as Mr O'Meara has pointed out, it was not built as a conference centre. So we were keeping the funding from the Tourism Board because obviously it was important that the council, and it wasn't a full cost to the ratepayer. But the idea of 1,000 people being able to be fed at one sitting was the key thing around the issue, 1,000 plates. And I think that's one of the reasons why the extension was needed, but also because the conference facilities aren't there. There has been a huge opportunity cost in terms of conferences we've lost because they've gone elsewhere, because we haven't had those facilities. And there's nowhere else in the city that can provide them. Nowhere. In fact, there's nowhere else in Northern Ireland can provide them. So I think that's something which we have to put on the record. But in terms of that, I would imagine with the work that you're doing alongside Belfast City Council and the Visit Belfast Board, that you're actively out there seeking conferences to come when the facilities are on stream, as you were saying, Laura, next year. Can you give us some information on that at all? Or?
We can, to a certain point, in the sense that they are out and they are the pipeline is looking good in terms of actually getting the ink dotted on the contracts for those to be able to announce, which we can't do. It's someone else's publicity. That will be able to happen whenever the operating model is agreed. So those two things go hand in hand. So the contract is then signed with the entity. So what I can say is that activity is happening and can be confirmed down the line when the operating model is agreed.
I think, just to add to that, Visit Belfast have been out proactively selling what we know is coming down the line for a period of time to create that pipeline, but also the Belfast Waterfront is in the final stages of putting in place its sales and marketing team, which will also help to ramp that activity up in terms of moving into future years. I think the critical part of that development is the exhibition space that can support the conferences, which is where we've had the gap before. So it's opening up a whole load of new opportunities to us, and certainly Belfast is being very proactive in terms of going out and searching for them.
Mm-hmm. Just turning then to HMS Caroline, I know my colleague Brian Kingston was very heavily involved in trying to secure the money, and I know Nigel Dodds as well. Can I just ask, in terms of the joined upness of all of this, around, we did have the Laganside Corporation, which is no more. We've talked about the Waterfront Hall, then we move up towards Titanic, and we've got bits in between. It's very, very important that we get it all joined up in terms of the tourism attraction around the maritime history of the city. And I think that is hugely important. Now, there are other, HMS Caroline is very important, historic, because of what you've outlined, Laura, but you've also got the Nomadic, which we secured the funding to bring back. You've also got a couple of important vessels sitting in the museum at Hollywood there. But no one ever sees those. And I think if we're going to have the Result and the Mary and Joseph, I think are the two particular vessels. I think it would be important in terms of having a maritime museum or a maritime aspect to the whole development around that Titanic, and I know there's a maritime festival now. It's hugely important that that's done, because the city has a significant maritime history, in terms of the two shipyards in particular, but also in terms of the heritage and the industrial heritage there. How do we get it all joined up?
Well, actually, your point is well made and recognised, and we have made significant strides in that direction in terms of what we are actually called clustering, which is essentially the cross-selling and the upselling in terms of what you're talking about. If we deal specifically, first of all, in and around the Titanic Quarter, TfL have led on what they're calling a destination forum, which is a group of all of the businesses that are down there, and they meet regularly to discuss integration and opportunities. And where the Tourist Board are actually adding value now to that process is via the provision of a mentor to that group. And this is a new sort of, or it's an evolution really of our industry development programme at NITB, where we're actually providing much more bespoke one-to-one support to tourism businesses, particularly those that are very keen on working together. So rather than just one individual business come forward, if they come forward as a cluster, then we can provide a bit of mentorship to them to help across a variety of areas of work. So we are proactively working. It's really as a pilot at the moment, to be honest, to test this, but that is how we would like to facilitate a group of people to come forward as a cluster, as a destination, to really provide that integration. So that's only one area, but in terms of the wider, it could be around the wider maritime heritage proposition, it could be in another destination, it could be a literary experience, but it is something that we are very much proactively working on, because I guess it's about trying to get depth and consistency to the visitor experience right across Northern Ireland.
The other thing is, obviously, when you have large events, access then can be a difficulty for people getting across from coming in from North Antrim or County Antrim, coming in from the north of the city, and so on across the river at times. So have you factored in the new footbridge that's going to go in there, the swing bridge that's going to go in? DSD's funding, and how that then opens up, for example, when the tall ships come back, so, the bottleneck that can be created there, or when there are large events in the Odyssey and things like that. Because I think sometimes there's criticism about the infrastructure supporting large events there, and I think that's something which will be important as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And my understanding, that's very much part of the Belfast plan and the Belfast agenda in terms of how the city connects and how people can be moved across and through and around the city.
And then just finally, Chair, in terms of cultural tourism, which you think you touched on, I mean, I think you'll know the exact figure, but more than 50% of tourists across the world are cultural tourists who will come for things that other people might regard as being obscure, but will come for the uniqueness of this place. And I think the maritime history, given that you've got the Harland and Wolff and the history and Titanic and all that, and I think it's, as a brand, Titanic is bigger than the brand. I remember the First Minister saying this, I don't know, a few weeks ago. This committee, the brand of Titanic is bigger than the brand of Ireland, Northern Ireland, or Republic of Ireland, but just simply because of the. Now, okay, there's some negatives around that, but are we doing enough to exploit that internationally? And is that not a big selling point for the whole of Titanic, but not just Titanic, the city? Not the only one, but the largest one in terms of world reach.
Belfast City Council are leading on a piece of work at the moment, which I have been involved in, to determine what is the narrative for Belfast and what is its relationship with the rest of Northern Ireland. And it will very much focus on what are the unique selling points or the differentiation that this place has, and how does everyone who's out there promoting do it in a consistent way, be it for education, tourism, investment. And I think that will be an extremely important piece of work in terms of ensuring that assets like that are maximised in terms of how we collectively tell that story.
You're confident that there's the necessary joined upness then whenever Belfast City Council do this piece of work with yourselves and selling Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, or then nationally and internationally, that will be there sufficiently?
Well, certainly at the first, they've put together a group of key stakeholders, we don't like that word, but partners who would all have relevant interests. They're all very senior level people from their organisations, and the council have said, we can facilitate this process, but we collectively have to own it. So there has been certainly wide representation in that group and commitment to working through this process. So I'd hope to see that would play out at the other end.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
Chairman.
And Tussle O'Muller.
Thank you, Catherine and Laura. You seem to have ended up with a fairly good budget settlement.
Steady.
You seem to have done okay, so we're delighted to see you're focused on especially on capital build, and the idea of connectivity is vital. Last night, the Belfast City Council agreed to spend $4 million on the rejuvenation or reopening of the Lagan navigation, the first time in 60 years there's been any money spent, so that's another opportunity. I want to congratulate you on your investment through Europe, in particular in the Waterfront Convention Centre. It's the first time I've ever heard anyone criticise for not building a temporary convention centre when they're building a new convention centre, but I think it's going to transform the city's proposition. The HMS Caroline is miraculous in my view. I was on it at the launch, and it was it was in danger of sinking, I thought, which happens in that part of the world. But I mean, it's a great project. To have it ready for the anniversary centenary of the Battle of Jutland, the end of May, would be quite an achievement. But in terms of capital build, you've gone through a number of projects here. Some of them are quite impressive, the Waterfront Hall, HMS Caroline in particular. But what's coming down the track in terms of projects which cost over £20 million? Because I'm firmly of the opinion we need another project at the scale of Titanic Belfast. We may not spend £90 million on it, but I do think we need a major, game-changing tourism centred, oriented capital build project. I was in Derry recently. I met some of the Museum of Free Derry people and the Siege Museum people. I think both those are great projects. It seems to me maybe there could be a bigger project up there. But I am in favour of an arts museum in Belfast, which Belfast City Council has talked about for some time, which could be a major project. But you mentioned, I think, 16 projects in the next round at this stage. It's only the first long list. But is there anything of the scale of the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre, of Titanic, anything like that even being discussed?
I think one of the areas where we have opportunity, and I think needs to be explored a lot more, is around Game of Thrones. And if you look what New Zealand have done in terms of a legacy project from Lord of the Rings, is there scope for a legacy project around Game of Thrones in Northern Ireland, or broader kind of screen tourism? That's obviously just an idea that I'm putting out there, and it's not something that's been scoped or thought through in any way. In terms of projects at 20 million, I'm not sure that we have any, in terms of the list that we have, that it would be at that scale. Some of the projects would be more significant than others, and that's really why we're trying to work with the local authorities in the local areas to say what projects or potential projects are there in your area, because the challenge for us is getting an idea developed through concept and actually to a robust business case to being spade ready to go live. And that's why over the next period of time we would like to invest some money in pre-development work, which we don't have in our settlement, but we will hopefully work with it so that we have projects that are coming down the track, because it is a substantial piece of work to get them from a concept into something that we can actually put up.
And Hurley Ussel, I mean, Chair, I think that's something that is a job for all of us, identify a major project. I'm talking about many millions. If we really want to have the same levels of tourism as we have south of the border in Scotland, I think we need to have more proposition, more magnets of attraction, I think they call them later on. The last thing I wanted to ask, Chair, is around Hillsborough Castle, which is now run by a charity. It itself has ambitious plans to up its visitor numbers, to have a visitor centre. Do they talk to you at all, or are they just doing their own thing?
No, very much so. Our board actually had their board meeting there a few months ago and got an early presentation on the project and the plans for the project. So a number of our staff have been out to do visits across the range of what we do in terms of our accreditation scheme for visitor attractions, in terms of looking at their plans and providing any expertise that we can in helping to shape that. But I think that is going to be a big project for that area and very exciting opportunity.
And have they asked you, just last time, have they asked you for any I mean, there's 90 acres of gardens there as well. Have they asked you for any money for any of that yet?
No.
There you go.
Thank you, Chair.
Just whenever we're on the cultural, literary heritage aspect, C.S. Lewis mentioned there, obviously, big fan of Seamus Heaney, international literary giant, God rest him, well known to many, including to my own family. What about the work that you're doing there? And I know the intention is that the Assembly will commemorate both Seamus and C.S. Lewis. What work are you doing around that, particularly to carry on in the vein of his literary prestige?
We're very keen to be actually more involved in that project, and actually we have the council coming to meet with us next week to discuss it, and we know that there's work underway there at the moment, you know, about the new Heaney Centre and moving some of the assets potentially out of Ballybougn. So we are very keen that under the new council that we look at that potentially as a real driver for literary tourism here, be it in itself or as part of a wider experience. So that's very much actively on our agenda at the moment.
Good. That's good to hear. Then Mr. Kinahan, Danny.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for not being here at the beginning. I always am afraid missed the first half hour. People have touched, others have touched on it, but one of my greatest concerns is the linkages of everything you're doing, and you talked of clusters, and I thought, fantastic, but clusters when you're in Belfast, of course, includes Greater Belfast. It's trying to get, are you looking at, it wasn't necessarily the same subject, but the linkages between all these good capital projects, and just how you get people to all come to them. For example, I think one airport when I stopped at it had nothing on Giant's Causeway because Moyle wouldn't link.
Yeah.
Further.
Yeah, very much so, because at the first stage of what we're doing around building the visitor experience is putting the bricks and mortar in place. Then it's almost a bigger challenge to connect everything and to provide visitor experiences that are connected and that flow. I think that the new local authority model and the responsibilities new local authorities have provides a great opportunity for us to actually get more coherency around destinations and more coherency around how the visitor experience links up. But we're also, you know, we would always talk about access being critical as well. Access both into Northern Ireland, but access around Northern Ireland when you get here, not just in terms of private car hire, but public transport. So that's why we work quite closely with DRD and with Road Service to really try and ensure that the visitors' ease of access and getting in and getting around is as simple as possible.
And I was also thinking down when you had the Irish Open up on the North Coast, it was linking to the nearest towns, so the local Chamber of Commerce and the trade were linked into it, so the buses were linked into it, so the taxis, so everyone is being pushed into adding more to the whole area. Yeah.
And that's very much part of our strategy for the Irish Open, which will be here at the end of May, which we can come and talk to you about another time if you like. And we're very much working with the Council, with the Chamber, and with TransLink and the European Tour in terms of the transportation plan and how we get people into and out of the area.
No, I'm very envious of your job. I think it's a great world to be in. When we move to talking about the Titanic, walkways and others, are you looking at expanding it towards, say, what Shorts did in the past? If you think, I mean, there used to be a whole mass of old parts of aircraft and bits and pieces all sitting up at the Ulster Folk Museum, all in a shed. There's a whole mass of things. So you've got the first vertical takeoff aircraft. Things, you know, is there a way of putting them into the walkway, making that interesting? And then if you go to yesterday's STEM debate, all the different scientists, technology, all the people that were great from the past, and a whole list came out yesterday, and I remember thinking, gosh, we don't really celebrate them, and if we're going to push STEM subjects, there's another link for your sort of walkways.
Yeah, and a critical part of the visitor experience is the public realm, so it's not just what you walk down, but what's, and if you, you know, there's the Titanic Belfast sign, which is great, but if you go to other destinations, you can see public art and different pieces of public realm, and they're also a really great way to tell your story to your visitors and to create places for visitors to take photos, and I think those are great ideas, and certainly we will find a mechanism to try and capture some of that in terms of where the opportunities are and what can be done.
Then you get to my sort of pet thing, and I'm sure others have thought we want to be involved, and Martine talked about, I'd love to see a Hall of Fame here, but not just one that just shows the...
Would you like to be in it, Mr. Kinahan?
No, that's your job. I'm very happy being low-key. No, there's so many great things, whether it's our rugby, our football, our Gaelic, at the same time our golfers, but if you could use modern technology, if you were to take Robin Glentoran winning the gold medal of a bobsleigh, you could have that experience. And there are just so many things we could do. You could have Seamus Heaney, his poetry being read, or teaching people to read the poetry. There are just so many different things. And then you've got the art, and everything comes in one big centre, but aimed internationally as well as locally. And I just think there's something that we never quite grasp.
Yeah. Right. We get excited by all the opportunities they are, and I suppose the challenge for us is finding partners to work with that will be able to bring these things forward. But they're all things that we would be very much welcome discussion on.
And funding.
And funding for.
Partners and funding.
One is partners and one is the funding.
Okay, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just come back. Yeah.
Gordon, yes.
The Titanic, how is it doing as a visitor attraction? Are we still keeping the figures up on it?
Hugely successful, and actually my understanding is that they had their 2 millionth visitor just in December there, so it is hugely successful. There's work underway at the moment to redo 2 of the galleries, is my understanding, just refreshing some of the work, which is very important that they continue to do, but it had surpassed all expectations in terms of original visitor numbers. But
No, just on that, I always think, you know, the spin-off from it, are we maximising the visitors that do come in and getting them out and about to places like the Transport Museum at Cultraw, you know, which obviously is a big attraction, but you have that distance of a couple of miles. You know, are we doing much to try and promote places like that and trying to gain so much from the people that do come into Titanic Visitor Centre?
I mean, one of the things that we really are working hard to focus on with Tourism Ireland is getting tour operators to programme more days in Northern Ireland. So we don't want Titanic Belfast to be a day trip out of Dublin. We want Titanic Belfast to be part of 2 or 3 days in Belfast, and that's when we have then the opportunity to bring other parts like that into that overall package. We need to work hard to sell what those wider opportunities are, so we can get people here, keep them here and push them out.
But one of the other things I would say as well is really our industry have got a critical role to play in this as well, and through our industry development programme we're very much proactively trying to get our industry to cross-sell and upsell to each other as well. So as well as the marketing and promotion side, our industry have to work together as well to ensure that they are pushing people beyond their own attraction to others in the surrounding area and beyond.
Just on that, the Tourism NI change and the work and the link in with Invest NI, do you see that as being a positive move in relation to trying to broaden the appeal of Northern Ireland?
Very much so, and we've been working much closer with Invest NI over the last couple of years and looking at aligning a number of our programmes, and they've developed some of their business support programmes specifically for our sector, which I think has been a great opportunity. And particularly over the last 6 months we've been doing a piece of work with Invest NI on developing a new competitive positioning strategy for Northern Ireland. It's kind of looking at a Northern Ireland level, what is our story, what is our narrative, and how do we sell ourselves in a more coherent way, so joining up our messages, and that piece of work is coming to near conclusion at the moment, and I think it will provide a great opportunity for us going forward.
Great, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
All right, thank you both indeed for presenting today, and I'm sure we'll hear from you again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, next item is agenda item number 5, Assembly Research Briefing, Case Study, Foreign Direct Investment in the Republic of Ireland. Including the papers is an Assembly Research paper at page 23 and Assembly Research Briefing note at page 40. Sorry, Martin.
Sorry, just I wonder if it's possible to write to the department and ask, are there any major, I'm talking 20 million plus tourism capital build projects in the pipeline? I think that's an important question for us. I mean, it could be 30 million, 50 million, but they've given us a briefing there on many projects. And some
20 million plus. Is there any reason why you thought of that?
Pardon me?
20 million plus?
Well, I'm thinking big. I'm talking about big projects. I have a feeling that, just without holding you back, Chair, I have a feeling we're into a period between 2015 or 2016 and 2020 of smaller projects, which are okay, but I think that we should be encouraging the department to identify and trying to encourage the communities out there and the private sector to identify a major project. I mean, if we have as many £2 million projects,
I think it might be a bad idea if we got a handle on them all, Martin, you know?
Okay,
just to
fair
see
enough, ask for it all.
You know?
Outside of Belfast as well, or just Belfast, is that?
I have a great project for North Down.
Maybe that's what I'm looking for them. There wouldn't be too many 20 million ones less that decide to do something with Loughney or
Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. You know, I'm thinking about our
Singing my song now, Marcin.
they could do a great St. Columbanus trail out of Bangor if they'd ever, you know, embrace them. But
He was a Protestant too, was he?
so, no, but seriously, Chair, I think there may be an issue that we should flag it up to in whatever way we can. Whether it's we need more ambition, is my view.
Okay. Can we get, are people agreed then we get details of the projects, capital projects that are upcoming? Okay?
Please, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Patsy, there's a difference between what's upcoming, because that's what we're after getting, and what Martin's looking for is actually a massive development. You know, because it's not in the scheme we've been told about, and I don't think the smaller schemes you're talking about between 2016 and 2020 are under consideration yet. So I do think there is merit in looking to see what the
But you're talking about the ones that are under consideration, isn't that correct?
Well, I think they're not big enough, but I think as a first step, if we've had a better idea of what they are, but I think we need someone to come up with a much more ambitious projects than, you know, £2 million projects, which are
And in that they're utterly reliant on private sector, other agencies
Europe,
and stuff
Europe.
coming up with them too, you know, because
the Minister's new innovation, the Minister's new investment fund, which is going to have £1 billion in it and so on. So I would hate to think there are people out there who have a major plan or a thought or a proposal and an idea, and we're not encouraging them to come forward with it.
But we won't know unless they have submitted them to.
Well, I think what she was saying is there are none, but I think I would accept, Chair, but you say let's ask that list first, and then let's see can we go back to them and go back to the Minister and say, well, can we have more ambition in this? The project she was talking about seemed to me, I asked whether only 20 million, and she said no. And you know, we need that type, and maybe we need that scale of project if we, whether it's around HENI or around literature or whatever.
It will require input from other stakeholders or partners, or whatever phrase you, whatever word you choose there. So just to get it cleared.
Summarise, Chair.
Pardon?
Summarise?
Yes, to summarise it, yes.
Would it be clear to the committees for asking Danny, are there any additional large-scale capital build projects in the pipeline or under consideration, or have any been proposed by any party?
And I think as part of that, the Chair's right, we should ask for the list of, she mentioned a short list or a long list of 16 projects. I think we should ask for those.
So, yes, William, you wanted to...
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point, Chair, and reinforce the point you were making there. It's absolutely vital in this. I think the last time I read a piece, there's something like 6 departments here have an involvement in some way in tourism. It is absolutely crucial that there is the joined upness between the departments, obviously led by DETI through Tourism Northern Ireland, and the councils. But everybody needs, because what I was talking about there, you know, museums in Northern Ireland need to be brought in this as well. There's no point people having resources that are hidden away and whatever, and not being put on display that actually will enhance the package that is Northern Ireland or whatever, in whatever sphere we're wanting to promote the place. Joined upness is the key to the whole thing.
Absolutely. So,
that's fine.
Right. Okay. Agreed. Thanks for that. So back to agenda item number 5. This is the FDI investment in the Republic. We have Assembly research paper at page 23 and a research briefing note at page 45. And before us today is Research Officer Aidan Stennett to speak on the paper. Aidan, thanks very much indeed for your paper, which has raised a number of issues and very well put together. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to give us a bit of an overview and then we'll go to the Q&A from members?
Yes, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, the paper or these papers follow on from previous case study research that we carried out, and they look in detail at the FDI proposition in the Republic of Ireland. The main paper takes a slightly different approach to the previous case studies, in that it looks at how the Republic of Ireland established itself as an attractive region for FDI, a number of current perspectives on its FDI offering, and then it provides an overview of the ROI government's strategic approach to maintaining and enhancing its position up until 2020. There's a lot of detail in the paper, so I'll just focus on some of the conclusions. One of the big issues when thinking about the Republic of Ireland is the corporation tax rate. It remains a central pillar of the ROI's FDI strategy. Its importance, I suppose, is exemplified in the statement by the US Department of State. The US is the single largest investor into the Republic of Ireland, and their Department of State says explicitly one of Ireland's most attractive features as an FDI destination is its low corporate tax rate. However, if you look at the perspectives on the region's historic development and on its current FDI offering, it shows that there's a certain agreement amongst commentators that the country's corporation tax is only one amongst a number of pull factors for investment. This is recognised in the government's strategy to 2020, which states that Ireland's relative cost competitiveness, corporate tax rate, and available direct firm level financial supports remain critically important. But in reality, they are no longer aspects that will substantially differentiate Ireland's offering for FDI over the longer term. So, consider the other factors that are important to the ROI's FDI proposition are identified throughout the paper, and these include things like complementing the low corporation tax rate with incentives for specific activities, such as the R&D tax credit. These are further complemented by financial incentives, such as grant aid. The country has a strong economic environment that has shown resilience in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. It is home to a base of already existing successful industry sectors, such as ICT and life sciences, an established base of FDI, including strong links with the US, and the ability to ensure that the established base of FDI continues to invest in the country once established. The country is shown to have a flexible, mobile and educated workforce. Skill gaps exist, but both the government and its business are open to securing skills from elsewhere inside the EU. The country's regulation framework ensures there are few additional restrictions on foreign investors, ensuring that they are treated equally to local businesses. The country has a range of regulations, such as property rights regime, its visas, work permits, residence requirements, double taxation agreements, things like this, that are all viewed as conducive to FDI. And although the cost of doing business is high in some areas, such as labour costs, transportation, utilities and property, the country is seen as being cost competitive. For example, labour productivity is amongst the highest in the OECD, and employer social security contributions are amongst the lowest in OECD and EU countries. So, looking forward, the ROI strategy for FDI up to 2020, as already mentioned, it seeks to truly differentiate the region from its competitors. To achieve this, the strategy seeks to build upon its existing strengths and develop competitive advantages in new areas, such as seeking new investment from untapped regions and developing new sectoral advantages. In this respect, the strategy seeks to expand the top performing sectors and increase the competitiveness of other sectors, increase FDI inflows from underrepresented regions while maintaining levels of investment from the US and Europe, diversify FDI by facilitating different modes of investment, enhance the country's talent pool, continue to develop Dublin and the regions to attract investors and talent, build on successes in R&D and innovation, develop and support clusters, increase the cost competitiveness, maintain the effectiveness of their investment promotion agencies, and to continue to offer the 12.5% corporation tax. Overall, the Republic of Ireland case shows a holistic approach to FDI attraction. It is consistent with the findings of the previous research case studies, which concluded that FDI regions with strong FDI propositions promote themselves based on their overall investment offering rather than emphasising a particular factor or factors of that offering. And it's also consistent with the OECD's 2006 finding on the Republic of Ireland, where they said if there are any lessons from the Republic of Ireland experience for other countries, they are that there are no simple solutions, that not much will happen until a range of sensible policies coalesce. So, just briefly on the second paper, this looked at provision of specific factors in Northern Ireland compared to the Republic of Ireland, where possible on some occasions, like visas, it's only possible to compare it to the UK as a whole. On the visas, the comparison of visa arrangements between the UK and ROI show that similar products, I suppose, are offered to investors and entrepreneurs in both jurisdictions, but the UK tends to be more expensive in terms of required investment funds and the application fees. On the labour market, the Republic of Ireland was praised by the US Department of State for its labour flexibility, and in particular for the lower level of restrictiveness compared to elsewhere in Europe. The latest OECD data from 2013 shows that the UK is one of the least restrictive employment regulation regimes of all OECD member countries, and it also shows that the ROI is more restrictive than the UK. The OECD data unfortunately doesn't examine Northern Ireland specifically. To do this, the paper used data from EAGNI, their competitiveness index from Northern Ireland. This ranked Northern Ireland's overall labour market efficiency as lower than both the UK and the Republic of Ireland. And it also ranked Northern Ireland lower than both regions in 5 other areas. That's cooperation, labour and employer relations, hiring and firing practices, pay and productivity, reliance on professional management and brain drain. On R&D, tax credits and IP incentives, both the ROI and Northern Ireland offer R&D tax credits and IP incentives to companies. The ROI is currently moving towards a regime that is similar to the UK's in the area of IP. The UK's own IP patent box has been subject to discussions at EU level and is likely to be changed from 2016 onwards. And then finally, on the issue of locating outside urban centres, the US Department of State in their assessment of the Republic of Ireland drew specific attention to the magnets of attraction on offer there. Section 6 of that paper, of my paper, is a quotation from the ETI Minister, who says that whilst Northern Ireland is promoted by InvestNI as a whole, the InvestNI has engaged with local councils to assist them in enhancing their FDI proposition. And in both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, there is a recognition that it is the investor themselves who will ultimately make the decision as to where they choose to invest. So that's all I have to say, so happy for questions.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Aidan. There was one issue on it, just find it here, but complimentary on the paper, and it reads very well. And if I could suggest to members, I know we had referred to it previously, there we are, if we could share this with manufacturing, and we had mentioned at the previous meeting subsequent to this, we could agree to do that, please. Okay, agreed then. Aye, there we are, page 14 on your first paper, briefing paper. That's way at the very bottom about the cost base. It's just I want a wee bit of a clarity around that, where it says interventions here will seek to increase cost competitiveness, etc., opposed to low cost, which is an important distinction, particularly in relation to labour. We understand that. What do you mean specifically by energy business? Had it been on its own energy, had it said energy costs?
That's a typo, sir. It's energy cost to business.
Energy cost to business. Okay, right.
Apologies.
Oh, no, that clarifies that. That's grand. That's okay. Thank you for that. And yes, the magnets issue, to get back to it, because it has come up here about investment basically outside Belfast. What conclusions would you draw? This is the magnets of attraction on page 14 of your second paper. What conclusions would you draw around, aside from introducing the notional concept, the selective financial assistance out of the way? What conclusions would you draw then about, we can have all the apps we like and stuff, but it takes a good bit more than that to make people, to allure people or to attract people to a location outside the main urban hubs. What conclusions would you have around that as to how it might be done elsewhere?
Well, from looking at the Republic of Ireland, there is a continued desire to promote areas outside the main urban hubs. Their strategy going forward talks about place-making investments, and that's investing in regional areas to make them better places to live, work, and invest. I don't think there was space in the supplementary paper to do a broad comparison about what Northern Ireland offers outside the region. I think there might be scope to do something more on that, some sort of mapping exercise to see what we offer, and maybe that's something that'll feed into the later research.
Sure.
We're going to be looking at Northern Ireland more specific detail when the results of the survey are in. So maybe it's something that can be done at that stage. I think there is definitely
fair enough point. Fair enough point. Okay, Mr. Kinahan, Danny.
Thank you. I think two fantastic papers, really showing all the breadth of things that have to happen. I wanted to focus and ask a bit more. In the first paper, you talked about a flexible, mobile, educated workforce, and whether they actually put in place things that attracted people with certain skills to move while, or whether that just generally happened because they had a really good free access so that people could come to Europe through the back door of Ireland. Did you see it, were there positive things as well as did it just happen naturally?
I think it's a mixture of both. Probably not a very satisfied answer, but a key thing that came up was a willingness. There's a willingness to identify gaps, skill gaps, and to fill those. And there's no reluctance amongst businesses to look outside the Republic of Ireland to fill those gaps. And with the relationship with Europe, that's facilitated. You know, the ability to do that is there.
Okay, thank you. You answered all my other questions in the second paper. Thank you.
Okay, Danny. Mr. Flanagan, Phil.
Thanks, Patson. Aidan, thanks for your presentation. Sorry you had to go back twice to talk about it. In terms of the targets that the IDA have put in place to encourage investment outside of Dublin, did you find any evidence that had a negative impact on the level of investment that took place in the south?
I didn't see any evidence of that, but that's not to say that it did. I don't think it didn't or did have a negative.
Was it mentioned on the re-looked even? No,
it didn't. No, it was mentioned that was their approach was to promote outside Dublin. But actually, I didn't look at the measurement of that, and it's happy.
All right, I'd be keen to see if any work had been done to see whether that had actively discouraged investment down there, because I can't see it having such an approach. But every time we try and raise the issue here in terms of a positive method to tackle regional imbalance and trying to get investment outside of Greater Belfast and into areas that have been deprived, we're told that that can't happen, that you have to promote the region as a single area. And I don't agree with that approach, and I think that InvestNI should be given targets to create jobs and attract investment into areas outside of Belfast, the same way that the IDA do outside of Dublin. So, have you any information, or did you find any evidence about how the IDA use the equivalent of selective financial assistance in the south to encourage investors to come outside of Dublin, as opposed to just setting targets for the IDA?
No, I need to check what their selective financial assistance levels are regionally. I'm not sure if it's very like.
Well, you did through the chair. I think the report does mention some of the business parks and so on. Is that what Mr. Flynn?
Well, I know that they took interventions to create business parks and to create clusters of industry in different parts, but I'd be keen to see whether they've used varying levels of support for businesses to actively encourage them to get outside of Dublin, because it used to be the case here that there was less aid allowed for investments inside of Belfast than there were outside of it. That has now changed since last year, but that doesn't mean that Invest and I can't take their own policy measures of incentivising business to a greater level outside of Belfast than they do inside it. That's a maximum level they can offer. That's stipulated by Europe. They could implement a different policy themselves. So you don't have any information on how they use SFA stuff in the south? No?
No, not.
Okay, well I'd be keen if you could get some information on how they actively encourage businesses to get out of the Dublin area, and what policy measures they have in place to do that, if possible.
Okay. All right, Phil. Aye. Martin?
And I suppose just on the same area, Chair, and maybe you can throw some light on this, but at the last committee meeting when the boxing match between Fermanagh Geo, the Minister did say, I thought, going through, look, we don't have targets, we don't agree with this, we can't tell people where to go. I actually don't entirely agree with that. I think you can entice people to go to the wonderful Balahiban and other places. But I thought she did say then, look, we are looking at sub-regional targets for towns. I don't know if anybody else caught that, because I would certainly be interested in finding out more about the what they're referring to as a sub-regional policy, and if Invest NI has given any thoughts to targets. Obviously, when I thought about targets, traditionally it's been west of the Ban, north and west Belfast. Invest seems to have set their face against that proposal. But the Minister did mention about looking at that targets for towns. I thought you didn't catch that, Chair?
I didn't pick that now. No, I didn't pick it up. Phil, did you pick it up? No.
I think we could ask Hansard.
We could ask for it to be clarified.
But Hansard transcribed it. No.
Well, I suppose.
No, they didn't. No.
I suppose the question is, and it's not as much for the research paper, but I think we need to divide these two issues about where potential investors go and where we want to see investment go, because we've got into the wrong argument. I think the argument when you say we think we should have targets for west of the Ban, you're told we can't tell people where to go when they visit here. And I think they're two different things. I think we need targets for west of the Ban, and we need then inducements or magnets of attraction, whatever, to make people ask the question that they want to go there, and that we then target investment at those areas. And that's the discussion I'd like to have. I really don't want to have a discussion about we can't tell people where to go. I think our discussion should be about, here's our targets. What should the targets be? Because we know that the target down south is 50% outside Dublin and Cork, but 50% of what? What are the targets for? And my experience is with whether government bodies or private sector bodies, the targets are very, very useful. So I think the additional information, but it seems to me if you build a big plant for Xerox and Dundalk, or you improve the LYIT in Letterkenny, bless you, these things become great inducements and magnets of attraction.
There isn't any reference in the research to targets been set by the government in Dublin for outside Dublin, but it might be helpful just picking up on that if the issue that Phil was suggesting there, what targets, what strategies or positions are there for outside, if you like, the main city, or the capital as it is in Dublin. That if we could look at that and what incentivisations there are for that, if in fact there are any.
That's certainly something.
Aye.
Very much, Chair.
Would that capture all right, Martin?
I think it does, Chair. I think we should pursue this to try and get to a situation where we understand why Invest NI or the minister is opposed to targets. It just doesn't add up to me to be opposed to targets when we know that all elements of business and anywhere in the private sector they set targets. So it seems to me that this is the underlying challenge of our time in terms of the economy, is pushing jobs into the areas which haven't benefited as much as the First Minister said. You referenced West Belfast as one of those areas last week. And I would like us to try and get clearer answers rather than just arguments about become people in the car and drive them to Fermanagh.
Okay. Gordon, on that point then.
Yeah, no, just on that, I think, well, let's be fair, I think Northern Ireland is promoted as a region with Invest NI. I think a figure that jumped out at me was from manufacturing, and I talked about 70% of the jobs in manufacturing are outside of Belfast, so I think that is significant. So that, that there are jobs and there are new opportunities being developed outside of Belfast. And all of us that represent constituencies outside of Belfast, I think, are very supportive of that. But it is a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us, and I do think we need to be careful we don't get ourselves down into narrow tracks and setting targets for specific areas. I think we're all here doing a job, and promoting Northern Ireland as an identity, I think, is important. And I think we should continue to do that. And I think it's important for all of us to lobby and to bat for our constituencies and make sure that everywhere gets a share, a fair share of it. But I would be cautious on it, Chairman.
Megan?
Yeah, well, it's not really a question, it's just more of a comment. I mean, when you're looking at the southern economy, there seems to be this narrative that FDI and inward investment are the only way. And when you look at the fact that 5% of the world's GDP goes through the IFSC in Dublin, but FDI-related workforce within FDI-related jobs, less than 7%. So I don't see the same, for the other 93% of the workforce, I don't see that same gusto when it comes to promoting SMEs or helping SMEs or the public sector. So I think that we need to focus on that as well. And for the long run, it's more sustainable to focus on local investment and organic growth. So, I mean, Ireland, when you look at it, Ireland's now, it has the highest concentration of wealth in the EU, and it's now the most unequal country in the EU. And I notice, we're ranked in the southern economy is ranked in a lot of things there, but it's the most unequal country in the EU, and we can't really get away from the fact that that's because of how their economy is being run. Or
far better in the UK. You're better off.
Sorry, the most unequal country in the EU, in what sense, Megan?
In terms of the gap between rich and poor.
Right.
The highest concentration of wealth.
Right, okay. Okay.
Could go on about Britain as well, Gordon, but I'll leave it.
Well, we'll not go there. Huh? So, was there anything further then, Megan, in terms of?
Just making those comments. I mean, I think whenever you're looking at the southern economy, we shouldn't be holding it up as some sort of ideal that we want to work towards.
I will.
I think, Chair, just it might be useful if we had a report on the work of the, and this is not necessarily our committee, but there is now, as you know, a regional subcommittee or a subcommittee for the South West in the executive. And they seem to be, regardless of whether we call them targets or anything else, they seem to be doing some of the work.
For the North West, aye.
Yeah,
aye.
And taking on board what Mr Dunn is saying, I think that we're all, we all want the same output. We want our people employed, and we want people to be in jobs, and we're enthusiastic of that happening in Belfast or outside of Belfast, as the First Minister said last week. But I think it might be useful for us, if we are looking at this area, it seems that subcommittee for the North West is really looking at what are the opportunities and what are the magnets of attraction, to use the word used in the research paper.
It might be helpful if we could get an update on what progress has been made at that committee.
I think it would be, because it might inform our discussion and thoughts.
Okay, agreed to do that. Phil?
I'll say we've been talking some time about trying to get an evidence session with agencies in the south, particularly the idea to hear how they go about doing these types of things, and it might be useful as part of this inquiry if we can engage with them to explore this whole issue of regional targets outside of Dublin to see what sort of an impact it has on attracting or discouraging investment. Because, you know, Gordon can talk about making sure every area gets its fair share all he wants, but it's quite clear that not every area is getting a fair share.
Yes.
And the fact that parties voted for the inclusion of a commitment in the programme for government to address regional imbalance shows that there is regional imbalance out there. So trying to deny it at this stage isn't going to work. So, you know, we need to be creative in how we try to deal with these types of things. And just letting the market do it themselves isn't providing any solutions for rural communities and people outside of Belfast. So I think it would be helpful for us as part of this inquiry if we can hear from the ADA or somebody in the Department of Enterprise in the South about these targets and the impact that they have on redistributing wealth around the Free State.
I'm just thinking about the sequencing of that. Can we get the research that Aidan is going to do on that first of all? And then that'll give us an indication as to who we might need to speak to if that's a requirement, you know.
And I don't know if Phil would be content, but if you did have those people up here, I think you would broaden the scope of the discussion with them to talk about why they've been so successful. 250,000 people, 3,000 companies. I think that, you know, as we move towards a period when we'll have reduced corporation tax as well, I think there's a lot of knowledge there that would be worthwhile discussing with them. So maybe it should cover.
I'm more than happy with the broad discussion, but they're the issues that I would be interested in focusing on, but other members raise other points.
That's grand, so we're waiting your stuff coming back then, Aidan.
No problem.
And again, thanks very much. It's very well done and good bit of work. Okay, thank you. So then, next item is the item number 6, the Insolvency Amendment Bill, the draft report and final report.
Great.
And I have to go through it today. I wish I could, Gordon. Table today is the clerk's brief, an updated draft report. And last week we carried out clause by clause consideration of the bill and agreed to consider the full report at today's meeting. Just to advise members, we'll work through the report paragraph by paragraph in order to allow members to indicate agreement or raise any suggestion for amendment. Members will be considering the entire report, including minutes of proceedings, minutes of evidence and written evidence. So, anyway, we'll go to the executive summary at paragraphs 1 to 9. Sorry, oh yes, there's table papers here today. There was 1 or 2 wee amendments and technicalities had to be picked up. So here we are, and table papers then from page 7 onwards in the recently tabled papers. Okay. So can I just go through this here quickly today? First of all, to ask members they're content with the executive summary at paragraphs 1 to 9, that they stand part of the report.
Great.
Agreed. Members content that the introduction at paragraphs 10 to 14 stands part of the report. Agreed. To ask members are content that the summary of the draft bill as presented to the committee at committee stage at paragraphs 15 to 38 stand part of the report.
Agreed.
Agreed. To ask are members content that the summary of consideration of the bill at paragraphs 39 to 96 stands part of the report. Agreed.
Agreed.
To ask are members content that the summary of consideration of other issues of the bill at paragraphs 97 to 118 stands part of the report. Agreed.
Chair, just on that,
yes.
Other issues. Code of conduct for insolvency practitioner. We're happy that we've taken that as far as we can, really.
I think so. We've exhausted that one, Gordon.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah.
So.
As raised by a particular MLA, his concerns, we've gone.
That has all been clarified, and I think that has been clarified to everybody's satisfaction. So.
Grand, thank you.
So that's just to get that again. Content that the consideration of other issues of the bill at paragraph 97 to 118 stands part of the report. Agreed. To ask members content that clause by clause scrutiny of the bill at paragraphs 119 to 125 stand part of the report. Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yep. And that concludes members' formal consideration of the main body of the report. So if we're content to move to formal consideration of each appendix of the final bill report, are members content that extracts of the minutes of proceedings at Appendix 1 stand part of the report? Agreed?
Agreed.
Members content that minutes of evidence at Appendix 2 stands as part of the report? Agreed. Members content that the written submissions at Appendix 3 stands as part of the report?
Agreed.
Are members content that the memorandum and papers from DETI at Appendix 4 stands part of the report?
Agreed.
Members content that the Assembly research paper at Appendix 5 stands part of the report? Agreed. Members content that the list of witnesses at Appendix 6 stands as part of the report? Agreed. Members content for myself, the chairperson, to approve an extract from today's minutes which reflects the read-through of the report. These are needed for inclusion in Appendix 1, Minutes of Proceedings. Agreed then. Now, if members are content with the appendices, to advise members that the report in its entirety will be laid in the Assembly Business Office after today's meeting. And I would just particularly like to thank Jim and the staff for their dedication in getting this collated and compiled and put together, and their work throughout the proceedings and keeping us all right as well. Okay, thanks members for that. Next we move to agenda item number 7, which is the draft response to the OFM-DFM Committee Children's Services Corporation Bill. That's at page 98. And Stephen, I just put him across it earlier there. He's content with the course of action as is being outlined. Now, we have a paper providing an overview of the bill from Stephen Agnew. The corresponds, that's at page, this draft response is page 98. Paper providing an overview is page 100. Correspondence from the OFM-DFM Committee is page 103. And so we did consider Stephen Agnew's overview paper at last week's meeting, as well as the Clerk's briefing paper, and agreed that we should agree a response at today's meeting. So if members are content with the draft response and to forward it to the Committee for OFM-DFM. Agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, matters arising, there are 6 matters noted on the index, which is at page 117. And the papers for this item are from pages 118 to 133. So, the first item there is the departmental response from the committee query on the Agri-Food Strategy Board. So, it's more or less as anticipated. I know, Phil, you had raised this one. I think, or Phil, or was it Fergal?
I
think maybe Fergal as well was talking about it too. So
when I raised it, and now there's been a decision made. So what do you do?
So that's done. So okay, so that's noted then. Danny, you had raised the issue of the tourism statistics.
I did, thank you. It was only that I still struggle. I mean, statistics are always difficult to make things out of, but we're being told all the time and how well Titanic, and rightfully so, is bringing people in, and yet when you start looking at statistics, we don't quite get it when it comes to the overnight trips. And I wondered if we should be looking for different types of information, or different, just to...
Right, what do you suggest? What? Or maybe you want to reflect on it.
Maybe we need to get someone to do some research as to what the best statistics are, because I just think there's a whole lot hiding in it. If you looked, I mean, there's a page that I obviously didn't get sent there, which shows the percentages of sharing, which I'll put into next week's papers, which is what I was referring to as being sort of flatlining, and that the Northern Ireland residents are still 27%. They go up and down. I just think we need more accurate figures and in different ways to be able to really know what's happening in the tourist industry.
I'm sort of trying to grapple with how do we get that, or
that's what I'm asking. I mean, I asked the question last week, Chair, that are overnight stays a good, accurate way of dealing with it, and the response was they're one of the ways, and they're quite accurate. I think if we're going to properly analyse tourism, we need.
So, were you suggesting then commissioning some research to find out, say, for example, if there are other ways that this is done in other jurisdictions, or that type of approach?
Because, I mean, you've got spend, you've got overnight stay, you've got presumably people coming in and out of airports or cross borders, just to try and get a better picture, so of them focusing.
So just to add that, I mean, I would like to think, because we're being shown figures comparing north and south, that the same methodology is being used as well.
So it might be helpful to find out if that's the case.
Would be. I mean, I think all the different statistics are bewildering, and certainly some of our agencies are using different measures than others, because I hear different targets, to use that word being mentioned. So certainly any clarity on what we're measuring would be useful in how we decide. It's 1.6 million outside visitors in the north last, and 6.6 in Out the Board of Mates.
Okay, so in terms of the scope and exercise, obviously you would think instinctively, how do they do this south of the border? We could get that, but is there any place else?
Well, I suppose we should be looking how they do it in Scotland, Wales, and I mean,
If they do it differently.
just to see how.
Okay. Agreed then?
Great.
There's also that issue around the timeliness of the statistics we have. I raised it with Niall last week, you know, and I can't understand why there's such a differential between the length of time it takes the CSO to collate statistics and Israel to produce statistics here, and they use this excuse about cross-border tourists, but if it's not an issue for the CSO, why is it an issue here?
We could maybe establish that as well. Why? We know we seem to go around in circles in that one. Okay, next item is domestic PV arrays. A letter from a member of the public to the department regarding ROC payments for domestic solar PV. So it seems pretty clear from the response that we've got back from at page 127 there from the department that that's under its licence requirement. Power NI is the only one obliged to offer standard terms and conditions. So, not sure we can do it. Danny, you want to?
I wondered whether we should be raising it with the regulator, you know, whether having just one person.
Yes. We don't have a date tied down yet for our meeting with the regulator, Jim. I know they had
Trying to work on this.
They were supposed to come and see us, and then the date seemed to evaporate. So, there'll be one to add for the agenda for that then, Danny. Okay, thank you. Next is the table today for members is a copy of the letter sent to the NIO in relation to the impact of corporation tax devolution on credit unions and mutuals. And informed here by Angela, the Finance and Personnel Committee has similarly written to the Secretary of State as well. So if members are content with the draft press release, a copy of which is at page 128 of the packs today, and that will be issued today. And also tabled today is a research paper on the matter for members too. Okay. Great then. Next item, joint meeting with the Oireachtas Committee. Following last week's oral briefing by Tourism Ireland, was agreed that members would consider at today's meeting a possible meeting with the Oireachtas Select Subcommittee on Transport, Tourism and Sport to discuss the issues around all-island tourism. So, Phil, you mentioned this last week. Just do you want to further add to it?
Well, I think it just makes sense that we engage with Tourism Ireland together, because at the end of the day, Tourism Ireland are jointly held accountable by ministers through the NSMC. I think it would make far more sense for us to jointly scrutinise and engage with Tourism Ireland together.
Right. So, our members agreed.
Look at what they're doing in a comprehensive manner.
Our members agreed that we should try and arrange a meeting with that's the subcommittee on tourism, transport, tourism and sport. Agreed. Right.
The idea then would be to have the three groups together then.
Yourselves, them and Tourism Ireland.
Right, and both jurisdictions obviously would question Tourism Ireland, is that the idea?
Aye.
The one venue, one.
Give us a wee bit of joined upness.
Are you hoping to have it, or is that to be decided?
I suppose we've agreed to go ahead with it, and it's a matter of sorting out a venue then after that, wouldn't it be, Jim? We could invite them here, we could travel down there, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, thank you.
Aye. Agreed then. Next matter, EU Matters newsletter. Members considered the latest EU Matters newsletter at last week's meeting, and we agreed to write to Dell in regards to the €1 billion that is made available from the Youth Employment Initiative to ask for an update as to how Dell is preparing to avail of the funding. The clerk, Jim, has been informed by the clerk of the Committee for Independent Learning that committee has made extensive inquiries into the matter with the department and is awaiting a reply. And the clerk of the committee will seek our committee's consent to share this information with this committee once it's received. So, if members are content to await sight of the correspondence from the Dell committee before pursuing it further. Agreed?
Agreed.
Remaining items index, if members are content to note the remaining two index then. Next item is agenda item number 9, written briefing from DETI on the research agenda update. At page 135 is a paper from the department providing a research agenda up to March of this year. So apparently the research agenda only goes as far as March of this year, and as the mandate has been extended, would the committee be happy enough to ask the department for details of its research for the 2015-16 period?
Yeah.
Agreed. Next item is agenda.
Sorry, Chair, before we go, I'm intrigued. A whole mass of them saying completed. Do we actually know what happens after they're completed? They go onto a shelf or do something?
Well,
else?
that's a good question as well.
To the Daddy website for nobody to ever be able to find it.
Same question. I'm just wondering whether we should be asking.
Well, good question. What happens then? What happens to all this stuff? Yep. Okay, an update on that would be helpful. Agenda item number 10 is a written briefing from DETI on the Giro d'Italia 2014 post-project evaluation. The paper is at page 143, and ask members if there are any comments or that'll be enough to note.
Chair, just intrigued. If you go to the second page, 144, and it says achieved 12.7 million tourism impact. What's impact? Does that mean someone put that amount of money in, or did it create that amount of?
Okay. We can ask for clarification on that. What exactly does that mean? Is it actual derived income? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Patsy, see the 11.6 million in print media coverage. This is the same issue I had with the G8, where somebody says that such and such won a race, and that's taken as positive print media coverage. We asked them for some examples of what constitutes print media coverage to see whether it's actually worth anything at all, or whether it's just commentary on the racing.
Okay.
I think, Chair, in many ways it was a big success, the Giro.
Oh, why?
It had that feel-good factor. The long-term legacy of it, I suppose we all wonder how good it is in relation to the value from money on the spend, but I think it did get Northern Ireland going and got Northern Ireland moving very much into cycling and the whole sport of cycling, but I think I understand the number of visitors that we expected from outside of Northern Ireland and from outside of the Republic was somewhat disappointing. I think the visitor from outside just didn't happen, and whether it was families that were to come over or the teams or whatever, it just didn't develop in the way that we thought it would. But that said, it certainly was very positive. The weather wasn't brilliant, do you remember? It was a bit of a mixed bag, but I suppose if it was motorsport, I reckon it'd be much more.
Bit of a petrol head,
certainly, yes. Much more enthusiasm about the whole event. But to be fair, there was, it did develop. It generated traction to talk about. It really did, and it got a lot of media coverage.
Stuff,
and I think internally it worked very well. Externally, I'm not so sure, but in the round of things, I think it was a good project, and so
okay.
We could obviously learn from.
With those one or two queries, then content to note the report. Okay. Agenda item number 11 is a written briefing from Advice NI, the Business Deadline NI Impact Report 2013-14, and probably the impact report, that's at 170 onwards. So, have members any comments or they content to note? And I know that gives an insight into the invaluable work that people do here. So, are probably enough to note this.
Great.
We're still arranging then the meeting with Bob Strong, isn't it? That's pending. Okay.
What's that for, Chair?
This is. Remember they'd written to us last week, Gordon, about the upcoming funding of this and related projects. So we were to arrange a meeting. So I think all Phil and myself or anyone else who.
Oh, yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So that's still pending. And so if anybody else wants to attend, they're very welcome, and make sure that everybody's notified about it. Okay. Next item is correspondence. There are 6 matters in the index at page 201. Papers from this are from page 202 onwards. So if members are content with the suggested actions, okay,
Okay.
And of course, we have the on the whole issue of cross-border broadband. The initiative has been currently considered by the Public Accounts Committee, as people may have heard there this morning on the reports just out. So, okay. So, okay. So, are members content then with the suggested actions?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Any other business? Tabled today is a copy of the final report on air connectivity in Northern Ireland. And just in regard to the Minister's letter, the Department had been scheduled to brief the committee on the 10th of March, not the 24th of March, and the committee office is working to reschedule the briefings. So if members have any additional items of other business, no?
Just wondering, this report was done in December 2014. Why do we get it now?
Takes time.
Do what?
Copy it.
To take out the bits of cyclism is usually what happens with draft and final reports. I don't know why it took so long to get from final report being produced and given to the department to we get it and the fanfare of a launch was done.
It is a bit late now. Was that put into the public domain on that date?
No, it's going onto the website today.
Oh, right, right.
I'd like to know what happens between December and now.
Aye, well, maybe it's with the research department. Right.
Looking at the department or something.
Okay, so unless there's any other additional items of business.
Chair, are we going to discuss this report or?
The 25th of March.
Aye, the 24th.
My vision, all right, good. Because I think it's important we do.
Oh, yes.
Very much.
You get a chance to read it between now and then. Connect it.
Yeah, the thing.
Very good, Phil.
We're informed there recently, and the Minister talked about the number of seats that have been reduced.
Oh, sorry. Just
on that.
24th of March, that will definitely have to be rearranged because there's that's rather unfortunate. So, but anyway, we'll leave that to the clerk to liaise with the department around that.
I was just saying, sorry, that we should important that we do discuss this in detail.
That's the whole idea. So, Gordon.
The fact of the airports, you know, you hear about international struggles, the city airports.
Yes.
You know, they're trying to build an extension and so on and so forth. So there are a number of issues. We're told the other day by the Minister about the reduction in seats.
Yes.
That there are available in Northern Ireland. So I think there are a number of issues we need to
we'll have them. We'll have them on some other date then. So you can give it a good airing then, Gordon.
That'll do.
Aaron.
To be decided.
They're done there, Aaron.
We'll go there, have enough bother.
So, next, final item on the agenda is date, time and place of next meeting. That's next Tuesday the 10th, room 29 at 10 o'clock. Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Oh, brother.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29.